I'd like to start this Tax Day press conference by taking a famous quote from one of the most famous presidents having to do with taxes. This is from Ronald Reagan. He said, "What we don't need is more spending, and what we don't need are taxes, and what we do need is a lot less of both." And my God, that was true 40 years ago, and it's true today in 2025 in a big way. I'm Assemblyman Robert Small, and I'm glad to represent the 118th Assembly District, Fulton, Herkimer, Hamilton, Montgomery, parts of Oneida, and Otsego counties. And I'm here to be glad alongside my colleagues from the Assembly and from the Senate, and most especially President and Chief Economist of the American Legislative Exchange Council, Jonathan Williams. Thanks for coming from Washington, D.C. To talk about Tax Day. It's just a week away. Today's April 8th. Taxes are due on April 15th. In fact, due to modern technology, I just filed my taxes this morning. Filed them online. And boy, was that a big deal. Filing taxes can be incredibly stressful to New Yorkers, to citizens all across the country, because of what's at stake. It's their money that's being given to various levels of government, in this case the federal and state government, for economic policies that they may not agree with. And that's especially true in New York, because New York is number 50 in the ALEC ranking, Rich States, Poor States, and we're going to hear about that. 50th in economic outlook, has been so for a decade, and unfortunately, there's no relief in sight. So here we are with budget season, full swing in Albany, a week late. We can't pass a budget by April 15th. How is it that we can expect people to pay their taxes by April 15th? So what we're going to talk about here today is to have a variety of speakers to talk about the issues that affect New Yorkers. And first up, I'd like to introduce the Minority Leader, Assemblyman Will Barclay. Will?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Colonel. I know this must be a painful day having to pay those taxes this morning. I want to start by congratulating the Colonel, who's now a member of the National Board of ALEC. So I want to recognize him for that. I also want to recognize Brian Marr, who's now, I believe, our state rep for ALEC, and I want to thank Jonathan Williams from ALEC for being here. We're here to talk about New York's tax burden. My understanding, New York's the second most heavily burdened by taxes in the country. And sometimes I feel like it's a broken record. We're saying this over and over again. But it's important we do that. And sometimes I feel like I'm talking to my child. And sometimes to get a point across, I know particularly with my kids, I have to say it over and over and over again. Because our colleagues across the aisle clearly are not getting that message. Even this year, when we have a tremendous surplus, what do they want to do? The first thing they want to do is raise taxes. They want to continue the so-called millionaire's tax. And certainly we have congestion pricing, one of the biggest taxes we have on regular New Yorkers going in and out of New York City. And they keep talking about affordability. They always talk about affordability, but yet they're more than willing to come down here and pass policies, increase taxes that make New York anything but affordable. And I want my colleagues certainly know this. I think most New Yorkers know this. When we pass these types of policies, they have real impact on New Yorkers. We've lost almost 1 million New Yorkers from 2020 to 2024. And I'm telling you, they're not going to other states that have higher taxes. They're going to states like Florida that have no income tax, that have a very low tax rate. And it'd be one thing if we were getting something for all these taxes that we spend in New York, pay in New York, excuse me. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Education. We lag a lot of the rest of the nation in our educational outcomes. Healthcare. How many people have heard people expressing great things about New York's healthcare? Long waits at the hospital, tough to find a doctor. That's not working. And our infrastructure. One thing government ought to be good at is infrastructure. I think the last rating I saw for New York's infrastructure was something like a D+ or a C-. So we're paying all this money in, a massive budget in New York, and we're not getting any returns. So I want to thank the Colonel for putting this together. I want to thank Jonathan from Alex being here, and we're going to keep being repetitive on this. We're going to keep, sounding the alarm on this until our colleagues across the aisle get the message. So thank you very much, Colonel.
Next up, we've got our ranking member on the Assembly Ways and Means Committee, Assemblyman Ed Rock.
Thank you. And to echo the leader, thank you to Colonel Smolin, Brian Marr, and certainly Mr. Williams for joining us here today at the Capitol, as you have the last couple of years, as we talk about our state's economic rating, and we do it around tax day. We're in the middle, as Colonel Smolin mentioned, of a budget process, and New York State has the second highest budget in the country. We have an executive budget proposal that was $252 billion, and the theme of, at least the rhetoric, has been about affordability. And there seems to be this idea that we can spend ourselves into being a more affordable state. And that just doesn't add up. That doesn't make sense to me, that we can spend ourselves into being a more affordable state. And in fact, we've seen year after year after year, our state rated at the bottom or very close to the bottom when it comes to our economic rankings, when it comes to our business climate, when it comes to being hospitable to businesses and people wanting to come here and create jobs for New Yorkers. And we have so many advantages over other states, yet we tax and regulate our businesses out of business, and they leave New York State. And we have to do better. As we look at this budget, New York State was an outlier. As we came out of the pandemic, we were the only state that said, hey, let's increase taxes on our businesses. Let's increase taxes on our personal income taxpayers. And those temporary taxes, any of my colleagues who have been around for a while know, there's no such thing as a temporary tax in New York State. They become permanent taxes, so we're extending those in this year's budget. The majority in their one-house budget proposed further personal income tax increases, further business tax increases. I guess they figure when you're 50th, you can't go any further down, so, hey, we'll just increase taxes more. We cannot continue to tax and regulate our businesses in New York State. It is not good for our economy. It's not good for the growth of our tax base, and it's not good for the future of our state. So I thank my colleagues for joining with me today. We need a state that spends in a sustainable way and make sure that our children, our grandchildren have a future in a state that is open for business and that can continue to grow. So thank you to Colonel Smolin, Brian Marr, the leader, for being here with us today to talk about New York State's future and the fact that spending is not the solution to having a better future for New York State. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Next up, we've got Brian Marr. Assemblyman Marr.
Thank you, Colonel. I'm honored to be the new state chair of the American Legislative Exchange Council, and for me that means a lot of things. We're here today because when this report of the rich states, poor states comes out every year, we are here to report that New York is 50 out of 50. And that's something that doesn't just have an impact on the economy. I want to make a connection to an issue that we all talk about, we spend a lot of money on in the state of New York, but we don't always make the connection between economic outlook and mental health. When we talk about mental health in this country, in the state of New York, within our communities, we always talk about how we can increase services, but not enough is talked about when it comes to why are we suffering from anxiety, a lack of hope, a lack of self-worth. The thing that can cure that is a stable economy that creates higher paying jobs, more jobs, brings in different business sectors, and becomes the medicine that our state and our communities need to address that issue of mental health within our society. There are so many things that Alec has brought to my attention as a member, and that's one thing that I want to reiterate more than anything. is we need to make more connections, not just with different issues and how they impact and connect to one another, but also how those answers to those problems are being faced in other states, red states, blue states, purple states, and all the solutions that can come out of us working together in a bipartisan manner. One thing that I've often said is political polarization and partisanship is a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have the ability as Republicans and Democrats to address it ourselves, to take a lead and really call out things for what they are. Our economic climate in New York State, being 50 out of 50, is helping to lead to more anxiety and mental health issues and overall health issues in New York State. We need to do better. We're committed to doing better, and I am certainly proud to take a leadership role when it comes to this issue. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Now for the star of the show, if you will, President and Chief Economist of ALEC, author of the Rich States, Poor States Index, Jonathan Williams. Jonathan?
Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss such an important issue and such an important season of the year as we look towards tax day. Thank you to Leader Barclay, thank you to Colonel Small, thank you to Assemblyman Marr for the invitation and to the members for being here. We at ALEC are the nation's largest nonpartisan individual membership organization of state legislators. And we believe in the principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism. The idea is that the states should be taking the lead when it comes to the best and brightest public policy ideas. And today, as we talk about what's going on in New York, when we're here to talk about New York's economic outlook ranking, once again being dead last in America at 50th out of 50, I'd like to focus on three different numbers today. One, of course, is 50. And this is New York's economic outlook in Rich States, Poor States at 50th. And Rich States, Poor States now has been around. We've been producing that. I've been co-authoring it for 18 years with Dr. Arthur Laffer and Stephen Moore, formerly at the Wall Street Journal, economists. And we looked at matters that, looking at this idea of federalism, what is it that matters for economic growth? Why is it that we have some states that are rich and growing? And why is it that we have some states that are poor and losing population and losing jobs? And we look at the policies like taxes and regulations and debt and state spending that all matter for economic competitiveness. And we look at these 15 factors for a couple of reasons. One, we know that they matter based on the research for why some states are growing and others are not. But secondly, these policies that we measure that come together to bring New York's 50th out of 50th ranking today are things that state lawmakers in every single state capital directly control. There's lots of ways that states can be ranked, and some of them are based on weather or other items that legislators only dream of being able to control. I saw a few snowflakes this morning. We'd love to warm it up probably a few degrees here in Albany this time of the year, but we focus on the things that matter for economic growth. The number 12 is next, and that is New York is not just 50th this year, but it has been 50th out of 50 for economic outlook for 12 years in a row now in Rich States, Poor States. And of the 18 years, New York has been dead last for 16 of the 18 years, improving a grand total of one spot to 49th twice. So that's the economic record, unfortunately, here in New York State. Now, as New York is stuck at 50th, other states around the country, red and blue states alike, are moving in the right direction to make themselves more competitive, to create jobs, and to enhance the standard of living for families and children all across their states. Just in the last 4 state legislative sessions, for instance, we've seen an incredible, more than 25 states cut taxes and become more competitive and actually reduce the cost of living in their states through lower taxes. And this has been done in many ways. Something I don't have to say in New York at all. I mean, all of your constituents across the state here care deeply about high property taxes. That's one key theme that we've seen states address the rising cost of property taxes and assessing. The other piece that we've seen is a focus on individual income tax rates, with more than 25 states cutting individual personal income taxes. One of the reasons why that's the case is it's one of the most important variables for economic growth across the country. and it's something that the vast majority of small businesses, those are the businesses that are creating almost all the net new jobs in this country and have for more than a decade, are filing on the individual side of the code for the vast majority of those cases. And so focusing on the taxes that matter the most is important, and that's of course what states all across the country are doing. And then I will mention, this is not just a Republican issue. We are seeing Democrat-run states also look to become more competitive by cutting taxes. In fact, even Hawaii, a state that has seen out-migration despite the great weather that they have in the islands, Hawaii was a state under unified Democrat control, cutting income taxes this last session. We've also seen, for instance, Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, a Democrat, not just look to cut taxes, but actually call for the complete elimination of his state's personal income tax for economic growth reasons. So this is a bipartisan solution set that states across the country are following. And then the final number I'll focus on today, and that is one that probably bears the largest human cost, the largest cost for the state of New York because of these bad policies in New York that have driven the economic outlook ranking to 50th. And that is the net domestic outmigration. As we see Americans continue to vote with their feet away from states with high tax burdens and especially states with high tax rates, we have seen New York on net lose more than 1.9 million residents to one of the other 49 states over the last decade. That is not international immigration, that's not birth rates or death rates, that is simply Americans when they're here voting with their feet and going from one state to another, New York being one of the largest outmigration pieces there at 1.9 million net outmigration. I don't have to tell you what that means for communities that are being hollowed out. I don't need to tell you what that means for families who are losing their loved ones because they're needing to leave New York and other high tax states to find a job and have a good quality of life for their children. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, this conversation is a difficult conversation. Anytime I'm in a state that's in a bottom 10 ranking, it's a difficult conversation. But this is a necessity to have this painful conversation. When you have a problem and you're in a hole, of course, the first step is acknowledging that you have the problem. That's what, of course, is being done here. The second step is stop digging that hole deeper. And if New York continues with its current mix of policies of some of the highest taxing, highest spending, and highest regulatory costs on businesses in the country, it's going to be guaranteed economic malpractice and bad outcomes for the future of New York State. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. The facts are very important when it comes to public policy, aren't they? So with that, I'll take any on-topic questions to start. Zach.
So I'm going to ask an on-topic. It's going to kind of segue maybe a little off-topic. But because the Democrats haven't passed the budget yet, or like we've passed, seems like we're going to go to next week at the very least, maybe to May. Now, that's in part because some ongoing discussions about raising taxes. So, who is worried that they have to cancel their holiday plans and have this enormous delay to their personal lives because of, they can't pass the budget?
So, of course, when you do planning, you say April 1st is when the budget is due. In fact, I would say that we have legislators not being paid, so that creates great anxiety amongst all the legislators in New York State. Perhaps we should have a policy that if the budget isn't done by April 1st, that the governor, the speaker, and the majority leader don't get paid for the entire year. Maybe that would entice everybody to have the budget done on time when there's policy issues actually holding up the fiscal part of the budget.
But to be sure, you guys are people, you're politicians. You got your families. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to having 2 weeks off and then get to the second half of the session. So, how is this affecting you guys?
So, Zach, I was in the Marine Corps. The mission comes first, and I can tell you, those plans, which are significant and important, come second to actually doing one's job right here in Albany. That's why we're here today.
Absolutely.
Actually, Zach, quiet evenings at home are very enjoyable.
And just any comments, there's still some outstanding taxes. I think one thing that appears to be on the table is raising the payroll mobility tax to help fund the NTA and make that apply regionally, not just in New York City. How's that going over with you guys? Something you're going to support, Assemblyman Rowe?
I remember the last time they did that, it didn't go too well politically for anybody in the MTA region who supported it. Here's what we have to remember about the MTA payroll tax. It is literally a tax on jobs. And when the Republicans came back into the Senate after the 2010 election, they rolled it back. Look, the MTA gets over $7 billion in dedicated taxes and support from our state government. I know my constituents down on Long Island tell me every time they hear about one of these proposals, why do we keep giving more money to an entity, and then I read about scandals and waste and fraud? So I think the MTA needs to get its fiscal house in order before they're looking for any more money from Albany.
Zach, if I can step in just more about the late budget, because I think we have to hammer this issue a little bit more. It seems like there isn't any urgency going on here in Albany to try to get the budget done. If it shows anything, it just shows the dysfunction of one-party rule here in Albany, that they're all Democrats and they still can't come up to a budget on April 1st. I mean, to me, it seems incredible. We have to try to get that message out. We want to make sure that we don't become lackadaisical. We'll be down here every day until this thing's passed, if that's what needs to be done. But I need the New Yorkers to realize what's going on here, and we're going to keep hammering this. Our conference is ready to go, work every hour of the day to get this done. I wish the Democrats would do the same.
Thanks, Zach. Any other questions? And then we take anything off topic if there's anything there else. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to all my colleagues for coming. Great. Good. Thank you. Hey, Nick, how are you?